once again, I want to welcome you to listen. We have a lot to talk about today, but of course we're going to talk about Chris Rock and Will Smith, but maybe from a different perspective. I mean, this is an urban commentary, and so from a black perspective, it should be simple, cut and dry, but of course it isn't. So we have black folks falling on both sides of this discussion, and I think a lot of it has to do with our brainwashing in this nation. When I say brainwashing, I just mean the result of the experiences that black people as a whole have had in this nation. Okay, to where there are folks who support Will Smith simply because a slap wasn't like getting beat down or being shot, and that right there is problematic because assault is assault, and the reason, and this should be I want to make this point really clear. I was on a Zoom meeting not too long ago with an attorney, and I made this statement, and he didn't say anything. So he's an attorney, I'm not. But my perspective or my opinion about assault is, and the laws that we have, are not to protect the victim so much as to protect our society from a victimized person taking revenge. Okay. See, in some nations over this globe, there are people who are taking revenge, ancestral revenge on people who assaulted or did wrong to their ancestors, man. I mean, if black folks were doing this in the United States, you know what that would entail, okay? So we have to recognize the purpose of these laws is to ensure a civil society that is not a society based on anarchy, where everybody's simply doing what they want to do, taking the law into their own hands and handling their own business. You see, if a big man slaps a smaller man who can't fight back, then that smaller man might the next day, from an area being hidden, take out that man. Okay, and then somebody related to that man might end up taking this guy out, and one of this guy's relatives, and that would the cycle, just the society falls into anarchy. So it's very clear to recognize that our laws are not simply to protect the individual who's assaulted, but to ensure that assaulted individual has enough confidence in the justice system that they don't feel a necessity to take laws into their own hand, to render their own justice, okay? And so I understand that. So you can't minimize the type of assault on Chris Rock. So this is like taking the whole black thing out of it. It's just the fact that you can't have a man, simply because he's bigger and stronger, assault a weaker man or a more civil man and get away with it. Because the next time, the weaker man will find a way to take revenge. Okay? And we don't want that in our society. So let's not get so hung up on, oh, it was just a slap. But recognize we have these assault charges. So we have laws, not just for assault, but we have laws so people won't feel the need to take revenge. And that's why it's so important even for the police not to take advantage of their role as police, not to be bullies, not to be unduly heavy-handed with certain folks. Because the moment a society determines that they can simply no longer trust the authority, well, we see from a historical perspective, we see those situations don't really end well for that nation. Okay. That being said, for black folks, that's just for human beings assaulting human beings. But for black folks, we need to recognize that we are in a very unique situation in this nation that is a carryover for the past couple of 100 years. And so most of our ways many of our ways, many of our destructive ways are a direct and continuous result of the abuse and what I call the generational PTSD that our people have experienced in this nation. Even the whipping of our children. That comes from the slave owners' whipping of black people. It just carries over. You know, talking about 100 years of being corrected by whipping, and now black folks feel that they need to whip their children. We even take pride in how anybody in the neighborhood could whip your children if your children were wrong. Well, guess what? Anybody in the neighborhood of white folks could whip that black man if he was doing wrong. Do you see the correlation? So a lot of the attitudes that we have today are a result of the issues that we had to deal with generationally and historically as black people, to where we just figure today this is just the way that it is. And so it's just amazing to me that a black man can sit here and say, well, he only slapped him. Recognize the path that we're on. Okay? Now if that was the law, if that was the rule for everyone, okay. But it's very difficult to believe, you know, that Will Smith would have walked up on that stage and slapped Brad Pitt. or some other, you know, some comedian, okay? So it's very important to recognize why we feel the way we do. And it's very difficult sometimes. But we do have destructive tendencies. Self-destructive tendencies. And when I say self-destructive, I just don't mean for ourselves, you know, but for our community, for our own people. And I have to believe that it's because of the history we have in this nation. So that being said, so maybe look at it from like in your workplace. And so we look at Chris Rock. He was a contract employee of the Academy. He was being paid to perform. He didn't have health care, you know, all that. So he was a contract employee employed by the Academy for a performance. And Will Smith was a member of the Academy. So Will Smith assaulted, as a member of the Academy, assaulted a contract employee of the company. Now what would your company do if someone that was a member of your company walked up and slapped you, an employee of that company? That person would either resign or be removed. And then it would be up to you to pursue, you know, criminal or civil action against that individual. So take all the emotion out of it. Take all the race stuff. It's a black man. What about the white guys? No. Just look at a reality. I've heard, you know, compared to Harvey Weinstein or, you know, Polanski or all these, you know, other guys, or Mel Gibson and all this. Chris Rock was an employee of the Academy, and a member of that Academy slapped the employee of the Academy. He either had to be removed or just resign on his own, just like it would be at your job if someone slapped you, okay? It's not that difficult. It shouldn't be that difficult to comprehend. Okay, that being said, look, the program today is about success. You know, we want to be successful. How do we become successful? And so I was thinking about in three ways that we can kind of use as analogies, you know, to life. I was thinking about healing. You know, healing. Oh, this isn't a religious program, is it? No, this isn't a religious program. See, too often when we hear the word healing, automatically we think about a religion. You know, we think about the preacher, you know, laying hands, or the televangelist, you know, waving his white jacket in front of somebody and watching him pass out and wake up well, you know. So we see healing as something religiously related, but actually the definition of the word healing simply means to make healthy again, okay? And I think in our community, in our community, the black community, we have a need to become healthy again. And without sounding like a broken record, I think even our ill health issues, you know, relate back to slavery. Okay, relate back to ill times in this nation. That generational PTSD where situations have never been resolved. And so we have today a myriad of issues and afflictions that are carryovers from a more negative time in our history in this nation. And so we have issues with diabetes, okay? We have issues with high blood pressure. We have issues with high cholesterol, all these heart issues and all this. We have a lot of issues, a lot of our abuse issues even, a lot of our self-destructive issues, and even the destructive issues we have on our families, domestic issues, our inability sometimes to meld into the society, into the social order, and to function as a functioning member. I believe a lot of these negativities that manifest in our lives, in our communities, are a result of issues that have never been resolved from time past, okay? And so now I'm thinking that, in this day and age, where black people, even from Martin Luther King Jr.'s time, before and after, having high hopes that this nation would eventually do the right thing, those high hopes have been dashed, okay? This nation is not going to do the right thing. See, the nation will placate to a point, will satisfy to a point, so sort of to keep satisfied, but not enough to be equal. I mean, it's the same thing, even in the days of slavery, or in the days of sharecropping, after that, and all of the Jim Crow era. I mean, black folks were not lacking for food. They were not lacking for shelter. They were not lacking for sustenance, okay? But what they were lacking is equality. So given enough to satisfy, but not enough to be equal. And to me, that's unacceptable. But what we see, I think what we should be seeing by now, is that what we require is not going to be given, okay? If it's yours, it must be taken. Now, I don't mean taken by violence. I simply mean taken by determination, okay? We have to stop settling. And so when we look at our communities, when we're trying to get ourselves together, we had Obama, to me, the greatest president this nation has ever had. Some might choose a different, no, George Washington, no, Thomas Jefferson, no. I can't see a man who was a slave owner being classified as the greatest president, okay? So no, I see Barack Obama as being the greatest president, okay? And so this isn't political, man. If Barack Obama had been a Republican, I would have voted for him. As long as he wasn't crazy. As long as he wasn't hating people, and calling for violence against people, that would be fine with me. I would have voted for Colin Powell if he had run, even as a Republican. We know he voted for Obama. That's pissed a whole lot of people off. But anyway, we have issues. And nobody's going to fix our issues but ourselves, okay? So, now, black lives don't matter to anybody but black folks, okay? And I mean anybody. And I said, well, a lot of white people. No, I don't think so. I don't have an issue, because there are good white people, but they still benefit from the system as it was and as it is, okay? So I have to say that if there was an old saying that evil only prevails when good men do nothing, okay? So I look at our nation today. I look at our nation that is still suffering with racism, still suffering with ill treatment to people of color. And black people were emancipated, in 1864. Okay, so we got to 1964 is 100 years, to 2022 is like 160-something years or so. That's a lot of years. 1864, 1964. Yeah, that's like 170-some years or so. I don't have my calculator with me. So if you have all of the people of color in this nation, and I'm saying all black people, all brown people, all Native American people, everybody, all non-white people in this nation, and then you have all the good white people in this nation, the oppressive white people are a minority. So if folks were really that concerned about making this nation equal, they far outnumbered the oppressive white people in this nation. So I have to say that if the oppressiveness in this nation toward people of color, if folks, the good folks, were serious about eliminating that oppression, it would have been over a long time ago. But it is very difficult to be incentivized to dismantle a program or a process that you are benefiting by. Now, I'm not hating on folks. I'm not hating on good white people who are benefiting from the oppression of people of color. Because I have kids, and I don't know if the situation was reversed. I wouldn't want to sacrifice my child's well-being to make equal everybody else, as terrible as it may be. So when I consider these things, I try to consider the mindset of the good white people, okay? And I kind of understand. So I can't even fault an individual for receiving the benefit for what they are, even at the expense of the oppression of someone else, if they're not personally doing the oppression, but they still want their child to benefit and themselves to benefit the best they can. So if we were living in a society, I was speaking to a white gentleman once about slavery in America, and I suggested that if the situation, I was trying to identify, because I try to understand the mindset of an individual, rather than simply condemn the whole process. I condemn slavery and all the evil people that had slaves, because if the situation was reversed, I might own slaves myself. I wouldn't be bad or evil, but let's just, not with the understanding and insight that we have today, considering a circumstance, but considering if you were in that situation, that circumstance then. And this white guy was, he thought I meant if I could have black slaves. No. What I was saying, if white people were the slaves and black people were running things, I would probably have slaves. He kind of misunderstood. That was kind of interesting. Unfortunately, I didn't get that he misunderstood until after we had already gone our separate ways. But he totally thought I meant that if I could have had black slaves. No, I meant if the situation was reversed and white people were slaves, I would probably have had slaves. And then the reason I've told my daughter this, and she was like, really incensed with me, and I had to explain to her that you have to try to understand what the people were thinking at the time. That if you were in a land, now I have to differentiate between the people who were the white people that were living in America compared to the white people that were actually the ones who captured or purchased or however they acquired the slaves from Africa. Now to give this analogy, to try to understand, I'm going to switch it, okay? So black people are in this land, and you have black shippers, people that have ships. And there's a slave trade where they're going into Europe and picking up all these Europeans, white folks, and bringing them to the land where the black folks are, civilly trying to create a new land, okay? And so the consideration is that you've taken your ships to this other continent, captured these white people, put them in this boat, head to foot, for an efficient cargo storage, which is totally inhumane. And you've taken them over a 6-month journey to a new world. So these people on this trip who have died, who have suffered, who have been sick, who have been terribly and heinously treated, even raped, molested, murdered, tortured, killed, and all that they are traumatized when they finally arrive in the new world. Tremendously traumatized. I mean, imagine that. You could imagine that. Where their minds would be, where their psyche would be, what kind of people they would be when they arrived at this place after that long journey. They would be crazy looking. They would be animalistic. As well, showing up in the new land, in tattered clothes, no clothes, soiled clothes, filthy, stinking, hair matted, nasty, simply because of the circumstance of their transportation and treatment. And the trauma of it all. And then to arrive in a land where people are just civil, dressed well, somewhat bathed, and living normal lives, normal jobs. And these people that are crazy looking and traumatized don't even speak the same language. So even trying to communicate, it's gibberish. You, as a black civilized man with these white people that were just dropped off on the shore and auctioned off, led off the boats in chains, tattered clothes, and filth, you wouldn't see them as being as civilized as you, okay? And now you have an opportunity to acquire some of these that are not quite human like you, and get them to be the bearers of your burdens, do all the toil, all the negative chores, all the negative jobs, work in your fields, create revenue for your nation. Come on, who wouldn't do that? Most people would, regardless of race, regardless of your race, regardless of the race of the people. And so when I say that if I were back in those days and the situation was reversed and white people were the chattel, white people were the slaves, I would probably own a whole bunch of them. From not now with what I know now, but trying to honestly consider what I would be thinking then, given what I would be facing coming off those ships, okay? And so I'm just suggesting then that it's important to recognize the ignorance not only of the people who were captured to this new world, but the tremendous ignorance of the people who put them in bondage, okay? And so I can understand that. Now today is a new day. It's a new age, where the descendants of those white people and the descendants of black people recognize the heinousness of what happened back then, okay? And even so, as I tell some folks today, whites and black folks, is that we are the ones that need to take up the reins and handle our own business. If there is equality that we want, we have to take it. If there is justice that we want, we have to make it. Whatever it is that is ours, we have to appropriate it. We cannot expect that it's going to be given, okay? And so far, we've even done a pretty good job. As dismal as it may seem, some of our communities are kind of jacked up. There is a lot of crime, but there's crime everywhere. There's the same ratio of black on black crime as the ratio of white on white crime, brown on brown crime, red on red, yellow on yellow. People commit crimes against folks in their own communities, in their own neighborhoods, in their own, pretty much in their own areas. But if you consider this, that most black folks in this nation are the descendants of slaves, most. And most white folks are not the descendants of slaves. Now, just to be clear, most white folks didn't have slaves. Most white folks were poor as dirt, okay? The wealthy white folks had slaves. And some black folks had slaves as well. Okay, many white folks worked side by side black folks in the cotton and the tobacco fields, okay? They just weren't slaves. In a sense, they were like white inwards, okay? Simply. But they weren't slaves. So now we have 107, we have 200, even 300 years later and more, that now black folks are on the same economic level and surpassing, many white folks. There are a lot of poor white folks across this nation. And we see black CEOs, we see black millionaires, black billionaires, we see a black president of the United States, black congressmen, black senators, black Supreme Court justices, black, generals, black everything, okay? So we ain't even talking about sports and entertainment, but just whatever black folks have put their hand to, very wealthy black folks that actually just at the same level as white folks in this nation. There are lower economic class black folks, lower economic white folks. There are middle class white and black. There are upper white and black. There are extremely upper white and black. Just understand that. So in a sense, even though the descendants of slaves and the descendants of those who were not slaves, at this particular point on the same level, that speaks a lot to the creativity and the ingenuity of black folks to have taken such a dismal beginning, coming to the point that we're at today. Now, as I suggested earlier, there was this PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, that we attribute, to GIs coming back, say, from Afghanistan for 2 or 3 years, or Iraq or whatever, and we recognize from the heinous observations and experiences that it kind of messes with their minds a little bit, and we care for them. So we'll give them certain medicine, certain counseling, certain help, and to get educated, to become successful in life, okay? What I'm suggesting today is there is a generational PTSD that's never been dealt with in the black community. Okay, so when you have the heinous treatment of these blacks now coming off these ships, then that whole scenario that I described when I gave my analogy of white people being captured, but this is what actually happened to black folks. Of course they had PTSD once they arrived to this nation. And then being slaves, and then being tortured, then being raped, then being separated, sold, and all this stuff. You had tremendous PTSD going on that was never satisfied, that was never addressed. And so now these folks that are mentally messed up from PTSD, from all this mess, now they have kids that are born into that environment, to parents who are already jacked up into a situation that was heinous. And then we had the next generation, continuous generation, to what we have today. So what I'm suggesting today is when you have GIs coming back from 3 years in combat, those experiencing PTSD, they're acting kind of strange. They might be even doing some criminal activity, might be into some self-destructive acts. We know the suicide rate among those is very high, so there is a self-destructive mentality and attitude. What I'm suggesting is, so today when we condemn black people who are living lives that are substandard and self-destructive and maybe some black-on-black crime, we have to recognize this is a result of a generational PTSD that has never been dealt with. We deal with the GIs coming back from those experiences, just them. But we have never addressed the PTSD generationally that has happened to black people. So to me, whatever the issues you see black people experiencing today that might be self-destructive, come on, they're here. They've survived the trauma of generational PTSD, and they are still here. And what you're seeing are the symptoms, the effects of that, okay? And so many other black people, we've built ourselves up to a place of equality and even surpassing most white people in this nation. I know my wife is college educated. She has a bachelor's degree from Miami University. I'm college educated. I have an MBA. My son is college graduated. My daughter is on the track with her desires to become PhD. So I'm just, and most of our friends the same, okay? So I'm just suggesting that given the history we have in this nation and the PTSD that was never dealt with, that so many black folks are successful, are doing well, and are middle class and up, and those that are not are simply a result of the PTSD that has never been dealt with. This is a reality of success in the black community. And I'm suggesting we need to recognize, yeah, we are not there yet, but we are in a pretty good position. And my suggestion is just to recognize the situation we're in, don't be satisfied, and reach out to embrace more. So we want to talk about, we were talking about healing when we started, only to give the analogy of healing being not a religious thing, but of being healthy again. In the black community, we need to be healthy again. Now, to find that again, we might need to reach back to the shores of Africa, where our civil society was more civil than the society we were taken from and brought here. We've come from a civil society, so I'm suggesting we need to channel into that and find our way to become healthy again. One of my biggest disappointments in life is not being able to go way, way back into my ancestry line and to know the people I came from. Ours stops at around the mid-1700s or the late 1700s from my brother's research. And as well, my grandfather and my mother's dad, who's Mexican, came up here illegally from Mexico. I don't know anything about him or any of his people. Such a tremendous disappointment. But the reality is, even though we don't know these people, we know what the societies look like, we know what the civilizations look like, we need to channel into that and recognize that they were healthy. They were civil. That's why it was so easy to take them, so easy to steal them, so easy to capture them, so easy for them to be sold, out, even by some of their own people in those lands, because they were civilized. You take a bully today, And you take a person who is a thoughtful person, that bully can overpower the thoughtful person. That bully is not more civilized. The thoughtful person is more civilized, which allows him to be the victim of the uncivilized bully. So recognize that. The Africans were not uncivilized. The folks that use force and power, they were the uncivilized one. African civilization dates back thousands of years to a place that really wasn't civil at all. They were just able to overpower. So don't get that twisted. So recognize the power that you have within you. You might have to go back to channel in to that health that we once were. And so I know we're talking about, legalizing marijuana, and I know there's alcohol is legal, a lot of issues, but we need to stop doing that stuff. That stuff is preventing our minds from healing, preventing ourselves from being well. Preventing ourselves from the ideas, from the mindset, from the motivation to persevere, to do well, to go beyond from where we are. See, we can sit around and smoke joints and smoke weed and just sit around and everything's cool and then fall asleep and then wake up and the next day is just as the previous day. But it's not helping us become better. It's not helping us persevere to be more than we are. It's stifling us. It's stymieing us. It's canceling out our upward progression. We have to look at the life of black people in this nation as like a relay race. And even from the beginning, even during slavery, where the slave parents, at the risk of their own peril, were getting their children to teach them how to read. And impressing upon them that they had to be successful, that they had to be better. And they finally were. And still entrepreneurs after slavery, even though there was tremendous, backlash to many folks, in that time. But through the civil rights movement, even through Jim Crow and civil rights, and even after civil rights, all the way up to a particular point, each generation has been passing the baton. But now this weed... legalization, as the black community embraces it, we're just going to lay down that baton and just keep getting that buzz. The race ain't over. That's what we find with Sha'Carri Richardson, man. I mean, to me, I see it, man. She's fast. She's running. She has such a great potential. What sidelined her? The weed? Now we're taking joy in the fact that they're legalizing weed in this state, that state, nation, and eventually and all that. But what is that? It's moving us to set down that baton so our aspirations won't be going any further. Don't do that. Don't buy into that. That's a trick. If there is an enemy, that's a trick of the enemy. There are enemies, that's a trick of the enemy. Don't do that, because we're not there yet. And if we ever want to be there, we can't be sidelined by that opiate. There was an old, I don't remember which I could have been Lenin, but one of the communist leaders, socialist leaders way back then said that the religion is the opiate of the masses. But how about this? Opiates. It is definitely the opiate of the masses. Don't let it. So what does that mean? So why would that analogy be made to religion being an opiate of the masses? What is the opiate that is being compared to that is so devastating? The opiate of the masses. The opiate is that thing that takes away the drive to persevere, to be better than you are, to make you easily led, okay? Don't be that. Recognize we have the power to heal ourselves. Heal yourself. Get organized. Find out what works. Eating properly, exercising properly, getting enough rest, going to work, getting an education, doing what needs to be done, not committing any crimes at all, and repeat, and we'll work ourselves right out of this mess that we're in.